Hello, today we are going to look at how to deal with a spillage. The equipment and machinery that we supply or maintain will normally contain a variety of different liquids which perform various functions. For example, oils to lubricate engines, transmissions or drivetrains, or oils that are used for high pressure hydraulic power. Other liquids include coolant used to control temperature, battery electrolyte or fuel. Regardless of the type of liquid, there is always a risk that a spillage may occur. And for that reason, it is essential that we know how to deal with spillage situations. Before we look at how to deal with a spillage, we must first consider how and why spillages occur and what we can do to avoid these situations. In our industry, typically speaking, you are likely to encounter a spillage situation that has occurred as part of one of three scenarios. We will now look at these in more detail and think about how we can avoid them. Scenario 1. A piece of equipment that we have supplied or maintained has suffered a failure or damage that causes the release of a liquid. An example of this would be the failure of a hydraulic hose, or damage or wear to an oil or fuel tank. Excluding unforeseeable damage, suitable preventative maintenance is key to avoiding these types of release. If you notice wear or damage to any of these components, you should always change them in advance of any failure. Another example of where a spillage may occur is during maintenance activities. Although we are very careful not to spill liquids when performing maintenance, occasionally spills can occur. For that reason, it is important to remember that you should never park equipment over or near a drain when completing maintenance activities. To help avoid spillage during maintenance, try to remember the following. Avoid pouring from unnecessarily large containers, as your accuracy will be affected. Instead, decant the oil into a smaller container which is designed for pouring and make use of an appropriate funnel. When removing components that will cause liquid to be released, always ensure you have a suitable tray or container in place to catch the liquid. If the components being removed are in a position where you cannot place a suitable tray or container below, ensure you put down absorbent materials beforehand. Although please remember, this will only be suitable for small releases of oil. Wherever possible, to prevent unnecessary fluid loss, you should always try to fit plugs or caps to stop the flow of oil as soon as possible after disconnecting or removing components. And remember, if you have had components disconnected as part of your maintenance, always ensure they are reconnected and tight before starting, testing or handing the equipment back to the customer. Finally, when using liquids, there always remains a risk of totally accidental spillage. To help prevent this, always fit caps to containers when they are not in use. Store containers in a sensible position when not in use, and don't leave them lying around. Leaving them lying around makes it more likely that they could be knocked over. We will now take a look at spill kits and the various items that they contain. Whenever you are working, you must always ensure that you have a sufficient spill kit within easy reach. Spill kits contain various types of absorbent material. The kit that you use to deal with a spill will depend on the type of substance and the volume that has been spilled. In an engineer's van, as a minimum, you should carry a stock of absorbent tiles, spill booms and a hazardous waste bag. If you are working on trucks with large traction batteries, you must also ensure that there are battery spill kits available. This type of kit should only be used for battery spills and contains a different grade of absorbent material. These types of absorbents are normally identifiable by their yellow colour. Larger battery spill kits will often contain a neutralising agent such as crushed limestone or soda ash. At a site location, more substantial spill kits should be available, containing spill granules and larger quantities of absorbent pads or booms. These kits are normally contained within a wheelie bin or a cart so that they can be easily transported to the site of a spillage. Before starting a job, you must always ensure that you know where the appropriate spill kit is located. We will now look at the steps that should be taken to deal with a spillage. Before dealing with a spillage, it is important that you have all the appropriate personal protective equipment fitted. As a minimum, you should be wearing safety boots, overalls, nitrile gloves and safety glasses. In addition to this, for battery acid spills, you must wear protective goggles, rubber gauntlets and a rubber apron. With any type of spillage situation, you must always begin by stopping the spillage at its source wherever possible. By stopping the source, you will prevent the loss of more fluid and in turn reduce the severity of the situation. When dealing with a minor spillage, normally 1 or 2 absorbent pads can be used to absorb the liquid. Allow sufficient time for the pads to absorb the liquid and then remove them. Using a fresh pad, wipe the affected area to clean off any residues that have been left over. Alternatively, for a small spillage, a shovel load of absorbent granules will normally be effective. Again, allow time for the granules to absorb the liquid, then use a brush to move the granules around. Once the spill has been totally absorbed, use a brush and shovel to remove the granules. All absorbent materials and any other disposable items that have been contaminated must be disposed of as hazardous waste. They must be placed in a blue hazardous waste bag and disposed of in a designated hazardous waste bin. When a major spill occurs, it is important that you stay calm and do not panic. The first step is to call for the assistance of those nearby who are trained and capable to deal with spillages. The more people helping to remedy the situation, the quicker it will be under control. So it is important to find out who these individuals are when inducting yourself to a site. Where there is a risk of the spill reaching a drain, you must quickly fit drain covers if they are available. If dedicated drain covers are not available, use spill booms to prevent the flow from reaching the drain. Next, you need to stop the spill from spreading. This can be achieved by using spill booms to surround the spill and create a reservoir. Next, you must use absorbent granules or pads to soak up the spill in the same way as was described before. Once the liquid has been absorbed, dispose of the absorbent materials as hazardous waste. Once a major spill has been dealt with, it is important that you report the incident to your site contact. You must also report the incident to your line manager. This is especially important if the spilled liquid has gone down a drain. Be sure to take note of the colour of the drain and pass this information on when you are reporting the incident.